Alright, so today we are taking a look at this new character option from Matthew Colville and MCDM. This is the Illrigger. This is a class that has been in beta, I think, for... when did Chain of Baccarat start? Like 2 or 3 years ago? This one has been in beta for a while. They've been working on this class. Finally got this up, layout done. This is a gorgeous, number one, gorgeous PDF here, right? Interesting concept for a class that they have. But before we get into this, my review style is a little bit different, so let me get into that and explain to you all who I am. So my name is Taryn Indestructible Pounds. I publish a lot of stuff on the Dungeon Masters Guild. If you've seen the Merchant class or my Dancer class over there, you may already be familiar with my work. Or if you picked up Tasha's Crucible of Everything Else, or Legends of Frozen Far, I released a few products here. God, I think like 5 or 6 in the last year. So it's been a pretty busy year for me. So platinum bestseller over there, musician, D&D YouTuber, and I try to live stream a lot of the design process behind making monsters or making character options here on YouTube. So if that sounds like something that would interest you, why not subscribe? Stick around for the madness. I'm going to be talking about the Illrigger. So there's a few things that I'm looking for whenever I'm doing a review like this, right? Whenever I first sit down for the idea to design a class, the most important thing before I even get started on it, the question I have to ask is there any way for me to make this with pre-existing official options, right? I'll say straight up right here, the Illrigger, I don't think that you can make a concept quite like this with existing options without heavily reskinning something like the Paladin, right? And like, you know, some reskinning insofar as you might even have to go so far to change the mechanics of core class options. And this does get across this Hell Knight kind of a feel, right? I think the closest that you might be able to get with something like this in D&D 5e is likely going to be like a Pact of the Blade Fiend Warlock or Oath of Conquest Paladin, maybe. Yeah. So this is providing something new here. And the second question I get to is the concept robust enough for not just a full class, you know, levels 1 to 20, but also separate subclasses that can build off of that, right? So you have to figure out if what you're making needs to be either a class or a subclass, you know, a character archetype. The concept of an Illrigger with this Hell Knight thing, you lock it into the nature of an archdevil, right? All these different worlds and campaign settings that we have different hierarchies in hell. So it could be pretty easy to not just design Illriggers for a specific campaign setting like the Forgotten Realms, right? If we've already got several demon lords that we can, several devils, or archdevils and demon lords, whatever, that we can build subclasses around, then I do think that this is going to be fairly robust, and it might be interesting to even build on this if you're thinking about making a campaign setting for a world. What can Illriggers be in your world? So those are kind of the concept questions, right? So now we get into the mechanical power balance kinds of questions, right? My first concern is, does this function from levels 1 to 20? Yes, the Illrigger absolutely does. You can throw this into any game, it's going to work, it's going to play. There might be a little bit of parsing as to what some of the wording choices in here might mean, and that's kind of an issue of them not totally sticking to the Dungeons and Dragons style guide, right? The wording choices are a little bit odd in here, and that does cause for 1 or 2 instances of like hiccups with some features, and we'll talk about those whenever we do get there. I think it's only once or twice in the base class that I look at it and think this is open to some interpretation, and you want to codify this as cleanly as possible. The Illrigger is definitely not a class for people that are inexperienced with D&D. I think that this is the kind of class that I wouldn't recommend for your first, second, maybe your third character. Get familiar with the action economy, what actions do in D&D, what does it mean to cast a spell, you know, what does it mean to make an attack? Whenever I get extra attack, what does that do? What's the dodge action, disengage, whatever. Familiarize yourself with those before just jumping in and trying to pilot this thing. But for those of us that are familiar with the game, you know, we've either done some homebrewing or we've played more than a few sessions of D&D, the Illrigger is not going to be extremely difficult to pilot for you. So on power, power is pretty subjective from table to table, right? What might be super weak at my table might be super strong at yours, and then something that's really weak at your tables might feel really strong at mine, right? So that's the kind of thing that I tried to restructure a rating scale, more so based off of how useful are the features, and are they in any way exploitable, in which, based on the way that they're written, are they providing an unreasonable amount of power, or can they possibly be interpreted to objectively break the game, you know? So some of this is going to be, some of that will push it up into opinion. I really only try to mark something in gray if I feel like it is like, this is making it to where you just can't fail. You know, there's a no risk kind of a thing here. Or it does a thing like one of the exploits I've mentioned, right? Bag of rats, the whack-a-mole sorts of situations. There are some exploitable features in D&D 5e, so that's what I'm looking out for here. And then as far as what do I consider good balance, I just want to make sure that like this is a character option that isn't going to absolutely outshine every other character option at the table, because really that's why we're trying to keep things in check, right? To make sure that no player is going to absolutely outshine everybody else in every situation whatsoever. You know, let everybody else have those social moments, because if not every player is going to have, if you're just sending in that same exact face absolutely every time in every social encounter, that's not going to feel super fun, you know? And it's going to feel like, cool, well, we didn't really get to socially roleplay at all, but that one guy did like a whole lot. So that's what I would consider to be, you know, you are overshadowing other people. But everybody is going to have their roles that they're going to play. I'm trying to determine this thing's play style. So the Illrigger to me is looking like a frontline striker debuffer in a way, face. A lot of emphasis on this is going to be a social character. Scrolling through the PDF, right? Number one, the layout on this thing is absolutely gorgeous. MCDM has figured out a style that is just absolutely sick. I love this Evolve font for their drop caps. That is such a good look. But they're really running with, where was it? Oh, where was this one font? Yes, ITC. This is ITC Serif Gothic. Absolutely love this font. Whenever I'm doing graphic design, it just has a cool kind of classic 80s fantasy kind of a feel. And I love that MCDM is running with this as like kind of their signature look, right? This was the font on the cover of Strongholds and Followers. And I geek out for this stuff. Before we go much further, who is Matthew Colville? What is MCDM? So Matthew Colville is a fantasy author, I think a video game story author, maybe lore consultant, if I'm remembering that right, and a YouTube personality and one of the big top like celebrity D&D, celebrity DM personalities, right? His videos have been very widely acclaimed as some of the best on just Dungeon Master advice, right? Dungeon Master advice, how to role play, what does it mean to role play? He is a very like, what are the metaphysics of D&D kind of a channel. Super interesting. Gets across his style. He has developed a style very candidly, you know, just him with a camera. You feel like you're just talking to like someone with years, decades, centuries even of so much experience into this game that you've come to love. And he's just got a great demeanor. I love Matthew Colville's videos. Matthew Colville has taken a lot of his success and migrated that over and developed his own production company, MCDM Productions, wherein they are creating some absolutely stunning supplementary content for D&D. Starting out, you know, this was all kind of branched off of Strongholds and Followers, right? That was their first real big success. And then after Strongholds and Followers, he started, I think that's whenever they started in on the production company. And then it was only here recently that they started kicking down the door and like, no, we want to start publishing a lot of stuff, right? So that's where we got Arcadium. Arcadium is featuring a lot of very prominent names in the D&D homebrew scene at a level of polish and quality, unlike really anything we've seen outside of companies like, I would say, Wizards of the Coast or like Cobalt Press. Just the production and love that they're throwing at this is very, very present, and you'll see as we scroll through it. And, you know, the first 2 or 3 pages of this are Matthew Colville telling the story of an Illrigger and their party. You know, Colville showing off some of his writing prowess in there. And then we get into his design prowess here in just a little bit. But who all worked on this thing? So writing design, Matthew Colville. Additional design, Lars Bach. Art direction, Jason Hassenauer. Art, Grace Chung. Additional art by Nick Despan and Jason Hassenauer. Graphic design and layout, Gordon McAlpin. Editing is by Joshua Yearsley. And then James Intercasio is their RPG line developer. So again, thank you, James Intercasio, for getting me this review PDF. Very excited to get into this and talk about the Illrigger with you all. So the flavor text. The archdevils who rule the 7 cities of hell scheme and plot endlessly, eternally. Each seeks to bring the others to heel, to ascend to the throne of hell, unite the 7 cities and every infernal thing that lives there, and lead an infinite army of devils across the timescape until all worlds burn. Their elite shock troops, the terror-commandos of hell, are the Illriggers. Knights of hell, they are charismatic counter-paladins who master devils, disrupt enemy organizations, and command hell's armies. This thing is so metal it gave me tetanus, alright? As an Illrigger, your class features your hit dice, you're going to get a d10 per Illrigger level. Proficiencies, you get proficiency with light armor, medium armor, and shields. Weapons, simple weapons, and martial weapons. Tools, none. Saving throws, constitution, and charisma. Skills, you choose 2 from Arcana, Athletics, Deception, Insight, Intimidation, Investigation, Persuasion, and Religion. And then you can pause it here if you want to take a look at the equipment list. In order to multi-class as an Illrigger, you need to have a charisma of 13 and a strength or dexterity score of 13. So before we get into the features, let me discuss my color rating system. So this is a color rating system I developed because, yes, power, like I said earlier, is subjective from table to table. So these are ones that I'm mostly thinking about. How useful are they? Are they super, super niche? Are they possibly expensive for you? And I'll give you a few examples here. So overpowered and exploitable. These are features that we've figured out have a way to possibly mechanically break the game down in either the combat, interaction, or exploration pillars of play. For exploits, these might be something like I've talked about the Bag of Rats exploit, right? Where if you have a feature that rewards you for killing creatures and doesn't have a cap on how many times you can do it, then you can just carry around a bag of rats, kill a rat, and then bam, you get the benefit. I don't think that it's really intended to work that way, and it kind of breaks down the game. Or it could be like the whack-a-mole exploit where you get a feature that really prevents you from dying a little too easily. And, we say whack-a-mole because once you take that character down and they pop right back up, well, it just becomes this game of constant whack-a-mole with that player. So that can break down the action economy and some of the narrative for death in the game. Strong, useful at all levels, and I'll talk about purple and blue here together. These are generally where we're going to see features at. To quote one of my buddies, Ross Leiser, 5e is not a system of downsides. It's very, very rare that we're going to see you get a class feature that actually acts detrimentally to your character. Most of the time, everything's going to be above like this baseline, right? It's going to be either orange or above. A purple feature, these are ones that are typically core to your character. Not only are they going to pay off for you at first level in a lot of different situations, or they're going to feel like they're part of your core game loop in combat. These could be later on that whenever you do get them, it's going to feel like, oh, I have really actualized this power, right? They're going to be applicable in several different situations. If it's an out of combat kind of a thing, then it's really playstyle defining for you, for your, dynamic. Blue, good, possibly situational or unreliable. And again, these are ones that have stipulations, right? Against invisible creatures. Well, how many creatures in the game can really necessarily go invisible? Not a whole lot, but they are out there. So that is a situational kind of a counter like that, but it doesn't mean that the feature is bad. It just means that it's good, but it might not apply in absolutely every situation. Green, these are pure ribbon features, and these are actually some of my favorite ones that you can get because they add a lot of flavor to who you are as a character. If they provide a mechanical benefit, it's very, very, like I say here, minimal. At most, you can look at, like one of my favorite designers that's really fantastic at writing ribbons is Benjamin Huffman. His Pugilist has, I think it's called Street Smarts, if I'm remembering that right, that second level feature. All about just, carousing and like shadow boxing counts as light activity for you. and I'm failing to remember it all right now, but it adds a lot of depth to what it means to play a pugilist outside of combat. So those are ribbons. They're usually really fun, but they don't add a whole lot of mechanical weight. Orange, these are weak, possibly resource extensive features. So these are features that, like, my example that I go to with this is going to be for Elements Monk, where it just costs too many key points to use that. I sometimes label downsides to these, or like a weaker damage type. Poison damage is the big one, right? Poison damage as part of like Treachery Domain Cleric's 8th level feature is part of the reason why Treachery Domain Cleric, like, there's just so many creatures that are immune to poison damage. So you getting poison damage as a core part of your class option, that's something that I would feel is probably an orange feature. And then red, these are features that are going to be straight up detrimental to your character. It is extremely rare that this is going to actually come up as any sort of a character option in D&D 5e, but the one that I keep pointing to is going to be Berserker Barbarian. Go check out my video, because boy, we've talked about Berserker Barbarian a lot here on the channel. So that's the color rating system. Let's go into this first feature, which I have marked as gray, Forked Tongue. Let me explain why I think that this is a little bit too good for a first level feature. You have a facility with speech and know how to manipulate an audience. Whenever you make an ability check to persuade, deceive, or intimidate, you can treat a d20 roll of 7 or lower as an 8. Additionally, you learn the Infernal language. Okay, so this is what, and I think it was Heavy Arms that first like got me into this phrase. It's called a skill floor, right? You raise the skill floor up from a 1 all the way up to an 8. So what this means for you, as an Illrigger, most likely your charisma is going to be your core invested ability. So this means that your charisma, usually as a first level character, is going to be at least a +3. Your proficiency bonus is going to be a +2, which means that on a roll of 8, you are effectively always rolling. If you take, if you have proficiency on the check, you are always going to be rolling at least a 13 or higher. As DMs, we know that for the first tier of play, this feels like this is automatic success, right? So instead of this feeling like a cool combat buff or a cool social buff kind of a feature, right? This instead feels like you're more of a social manipulator in that you can persuade, deceive, or intimidate. It's not, due to the wording here, this isn't limited to charisma, persuasion, charisma, deception, or charisma, intimidation. I don't mind the open-endedness of that all that much, but I wonder if that's what they meant, if they want to codify it as like, okay, well, this is up to the DM to interpret whether or not this applies, or if you want to strictly pin it down to just those skills. The open-endedness, this is a part of sort of the wording choices that they made with this that I don't know that I 100% agree with. I don't know that this needed a skill floor, maybe a situational kind of proficiency and expertise in a way. I think that there could have been other ways to get this across. I just generally feel like this is a bit too good to get at first level. Oh, and I didn't clarify this earlier, and I probably should right now. If I highlight something in yellow, that's just me trying to figure out where the real mechanics are of the feature. So, moving on, Infernal Conduit. This is a very cool kind of counter or cousin to Lay on Hands. But it's not Lay on Hands. This isn't just a, palette swap kind of a paladin here. This is something else. So, Infernal Conduit, there is a pool of infernal power within you that replenishes after you take a long rest. This pool is represented by dice, starting with a 1d10 at first level. Your pool gains dice as shown on the Illrigger table. With these dice, you can transfer hit points between your Illrigger and other targets, healing allies at the expense of your own health, or draining the life force of enemies to rejuvenate your own vitality. As an action, choose a number of dice from your remaining pool and touch another creature. If they're unwilling, this is a melee spell attack with which you are proficient, using charisma as your spellcasting ability. If you miss, nothing happens. You do not roll or lose dice from your pool. If you hit, or if you're targeting a willing creature, roll the chosen dice. A real quick break here. This paragraph right here, I think could have been kind of cleared up, right? I made the note here. This paragraph stumbles a bit, but it does mechanically function. There is likely a more conventional wording for this, and I'd have to spend a little bit more time to figure out what that is. The result of your roll is the number of hit points you transfer. If you're touching an ally, they gain that many hit points, ignoring any hit points in excess of their maximum. You lose hit points equal to the number of hit points they gained. If your sacrifice reduces you to 0 hit points, you fall unconscious. If you're touching an enemy, they take necrotic damage equal to your roll, and you gain that many hit points. If you would gain hit points in excess of your maximum, you gain that number of temporary hit points instead. So before we move on, let me just talk on this real quick. Just a nice design thing here, right? Is they made it mathematically feel very similar to Lay on Hands. Like the ability just doesn't feel like a contrast or a complement to Lay on Hands because of the action itself and restoring hit points because you touch the creature, right? It's also mathematically really graceful in evoking the Lay on Hands like average rolls. So just a fun kind of nerdy thing, right? So right here, the average roll of a D10 is going to be 5.5. So that means right here from first to second level, your highest is going to be a 10 and your lowest is going to be a 1. Well, Paladin right here at second level is going to be able to restore 10 in this pool with Lay on Hands. And this keeps scaling up, right? So you get 2. This means that now your average is going to be 11, highest of 20, lowest of 2. Like, there is a really cool, I like this graceful kind of gradient that they did with the Infernal Conduit thing. One critique that I do have for this is that I think that the table would have been better served to have been a dice table where it shows 1d10, 1d10, 2d10, 2d10, 3d10, 3d10, etc., etc. It could have cut back on like Infernal Conduit. You could have just clipped that. It's a layout thing. I won't harp on that. It's just a real nitpick of mine. But overall, I do like Infernal Conduit. Let's talk about its 11th level. Beginning at 11th level, in addition to draining the life force of an enemy, you can also inflict 1 level of exhaustion on them. This may they may recover this exhaustion normally. This ability does not work if the target already has 3 or more levels of exhaustion, or if you have no dice left in your pool, and you cannot choose to inflict exhaustion instead of draining life. This first part of it, right? This is the real meat and potatoes. There's not very often, I think if at all, we've seen an official option able to inflict exhaustion on an enemy. I'm trying to remember, but like I said, not very often do we see that happen. You being able to do this as a part of your core foundational feature is very, very strong at lower levels of play. As you get up there in levels, more creatures are going to be immune to exhaustion, as I say here, right? This is weak against constructs, some fiends, oozes, and undead, typically because oozes, constructs, and undead are straight up immune to exhaustion, so this is going to feel like a nothing bump, right? So that is a fairly niche feature. It's going to work well on beasts, you know, you can get them all the way down to those 3 points of exhaustion to where they have disadvantage on attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws, and their speed is reduced by half. That's massive. If you can make that happen, right? So you can do this out of combat for some kind of a debuffing prep. Is this something that you're always going to be using in combat, though? You use this once, you get it to go off, then like, the disadvantage on ability checks, you want to grapple something, cool. That's like a thing, right? That second part, its movement speed is reduced by half. You as a frontliner are going to love that because it's going to be so easy for you to get up into position and start just wailing on stuff. The last part of that, right? 3 levels of exhaustion. Disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws. There's a pretty mean monster that is not immune to the exhaustion condition. And if it happened, and if you had 3 turns to keep popping this off, right? You could really debuff a Tarrasque because this is not requiring that the target make any kind of saving throw here. The Tarrasque would not have any defense against a feature like that. And you could, at 11th level, potentially make it to where the Tarrasque has disadvantage on ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws, and his movement speed is like, what, 20 feet? Like, what? Like, that's pretty massive, especially for a creature that has something like, legendary resistance. So that is a really strong debuff on specific kinds of creatures, and something that I am going to mark in blue because it is it's somewhat niche, right? That's not going to apply in every combat. But yeah, like I said, Infernal Conduit, this is getting this life-draining kind of narrative across, and I really dig this as a contrast to Lay on Hands. Fighting style. So these vary pretty widely in the power that they provide, and they're not exactly fighting styles. I think I would disagree about naming these fighting styles. Maybe this could have been something like a Eldritch Invocation mimicking sort of a feature, or like the Eldritch or the Pact Boon feature, right? These as fighting styles. Usually, fighting styles are supposed to be specifically martial, right? First off, this one Treachery. I marked this one as gray because I don't think that this is functioning as it's supposed to. When you attack an enemy who has none of your allies adjacent to it, you gain a +3 bonus to damage rolls. As this is currently written, this would work with Eldritch Blast, which would mean that, or really just any cantrip, because it's just saying when you attack an enemy. So to me, if that's like when you take the attack action, like that's the way that that should apply, right? Instead, this almost reads as if it's like this could apply to attack rolls. This is open to interpretation here. So if this is allowed to work with a spell like Eldritch Blast in a game where Agonizing Blast is also in the game, that cantrip is insane. This could also apply to Flurry of Blows on Monk. So if you pop in over here to the Illrigger as a monk, come over here and snag Treachery, suddenly Flurry of Blows is insane looking, right? A flat +3 bonus to all the damage rolls, that's sick nasty. Treachery, I think it should only apply, like I said, to melee weapon attacks, or just weapon attacks, and at that. And then I would be pretty okay with this feature, right? They're only getting, the one extra attack here, +3 bonus to damage rolls. It's nice. It's about like adding a little bit worse than a d6 to the average roll. But yeah, if you change it like that, if you interpret it that way, then this is a purple feature. Bravado. While you're not wearing any armor, your armor class equals 10 plus your dex mod plus your charisma mod. You can use a shield and still gain this benefit. I've given this one green. Like I said, not sure how I feel about unarmored defense as a fighting style as a designer, but defense, another fighting style, is a +1 to AC that stacks on heavy armor and shield. So I'm sure this is by the numbers just fine. Yeah, I don't know really what all it's adding, but if you want to go armorless Illrigger, it's here. Schemes, I marked this one as blue, but if you're playing on a table with a variant flanking rule, then this one's a purple. Probably the strongest one on here in that situation. While you wield a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you can use your reaction after an adjacent enemy attacks you to move into any other unoccupied space within 5 feet of the attacking enemy. This movement does not provoke an opportunity attack. So, very cool. I like I said, variant flanking rules, this is really, really killer. It is a positioning tool otherwise, and I don't know what, in most combat situations, if you're not applying the flanking rule, that this is really doing for you. Lies, giving this one purple. When you attack with a two-handed melee weapon, you can use your charisma modifier instead of your strength modifier for both the attack and damage rolls. I think that this should have been an Eldritch Invocation. I constantly think that Pact of the Blade would be a way more interesting option for so many other Warlock subclasses if this right here had just been, you can use Charisma for strength, whatever. If this had just been an Eldritch Invocation, and Pact of the Blade would have been pretty viable. I don't know why they didn't do that, honestly. It's a curious design choice, but I do like this a lot. The class is going to get a lot of love out of going high charisma. I kind of wonder about a paladin multiclassing over into here, being able to focus so much on spell casting, and I don't know. But overall, the fighting styles, again, if you reel back Treachery, this is going to be purple and just fine. Bravado, I don't know, especially on a class that's giving you light and then medium armor. Like, what? Yeah, I'm not super sure about Bravado, but I guess it's here for some build diversity if you want to go that way. Schemes, again, flanking tables, this is a purple. Vanilla tables, this is a blue. Lies, absolutely a purple, especially for the fact that this is a two-handed melee weapon. Oh, that's so sick. Yeah, I think that these are great fighting styles. I maybe wish that they had been rooted a little bit closer to schemes, where they do feel like, you know, more focused on the martial aspect of combat, rather than, I think a different name than fighting style would give this a lot more like narrative weight to it. So Baleful Interdict, this is going to be their contrast to Divine Smite. When you reach 2nd level, you learn to use the power of hell to censor other creatures. As a bonus action, you can place a seal on a target you can see within 30 feet, and you can do this a number of times equal to your charisma modifier. I highlighted this because usually we see this as 1 plus your charisma modifier, minimum of once. When you finish a short or long rest, you regain all your seals. When an ally hits a target you can see with any seals on it, you can consume the seals to make the attack deal an extra 2d6 necrotic damage to the target per seal consumed. And it has this footnote, this is not a reaction, it's free. If you're within 30 feet of the target, you regain 2 hit points for each die of damage your seals deals. So your seals deal? I think that should say. But you being able to replenish this on a short rest, it is kept in check by the fact that you can only do this a number of times equal to your charisma modifier, so it doesn't break Bag of Rats. The 2d6 necrotic damage, I do think that this is an interesting concept, right? You regain 2 hit points for each die of damage that your seals deals. This is interesting. I haven't quite seen something like this out of any homebrew. And I like this scaling, right? This feels really unique and like something that I want to toy with in future design work. And then getting on to the rest of this feature, a creature with a seal on them is an interdicted creature. And that has some implications for your subclass choice. Seals evaporate if not used after 1 minute. Only the Illrigger who placed the seal knows it's there. It appears to the Illrigger as a glowing glyph on the creature's forehead. If a creature with any of your seals on it dies, you can move all of its seals to another creature within range. And then whenever you reach 10th level, you feel your connection to your archdevil increase. Your seals deal an additional 1d6 damage. Your seals improve differently based on which contract you choose. These improvements are listed under Diabolic contract below. And that'll be, like I said, your subclass. So it is a different kind of mechanic to Smite, right? You're marking the creature, and that feels a lot more like vile in a way, right? Like you are marking that thing for death. There's a cool narrative with that is existing as a different contrast to Paladin. 2d6 necrotic damage. That is slightly, if I'm remembering that right, slightly lower than what Paladin is going to do with Divine Smite, right? Divine Smite, it's d8s, if I'm remembering that. Okay, yeah, so Divine Smite's doing 2d8, meaning that this is going to be doing 2 damage less on average. It is necrotic damage, which is a little bit weaker than Radiant. The trade-off being that the 2d6 that you deal to it compared to the Paladin's 2d8 that it gets to deal, you do regain 2 hit points, which is funny because that's the difference in like the average roll of 2d6 versus 2d8. So clever little design thing there. There is a lot of nice little things that I think the designers are going to appreciate about the Illrigger. So I do think Baleful Interdict, wow. This is a cool contrast to Divine Smite. I do dig this, so I will give this a purple. Hellsight, this one's blue. Whenever you reach 3rd level, your Mastery of Deception makes it easy for you to recognize the use of Concealing Sorcery. As an action, you extend your awareness out from you. Until the end of your next turn, you know the location of creatures within 60 feet, using magic to hide or disguise themselves. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your Charisma modifier. When you finish a long rest, you regain your expended uses. So Hellsight, like I said, not every combat is going to have invisible creatures. So it is situational in that effect, right? With that qualifier. Maybe certain modules like Curse of Strahd, this is going to come into play significantly more than others. I think that the Illrigger would be pretty cool to throw into Curse of Strahd, not going to lie. But you get this is here. This is a nice bump. I honestly actually think Hellsight, is that too good that I would have rather seen that instead of Forked Tongue? I almost think Hellsight would have been cool to have seen it 1st level over Forked Tongue. I don't know, opinion there. Your Diabolic contract is going to be your subclass, and I will cover those in separate videos because we're just going to talk about, the intro and the base class in this one, and I'll break this up. So your Diabolic contract, whenever you reach 3rd level, you gain a Diabolic contract with your Archdevil, who welcomes you into the Order of Desolation. Already sick with that flavor text. You gain the Invoke Authority ability and choose either Painkiller, Dissipator, Shadowmaster, Moloch, or Architect of Ruin, Asmodeus as your Archdevil. Furthermore, you are a noble knight in the lists of Hell and will be accorded fine treatment and hospitality anywhere in Hell that you travel, even the cities ruled by enemy archdevils. More cosmopolitan cities in the timescape, like Alloy, the City of Brass, will also respect your noble rank. Let me pause this here. This is what I mean about a really killer ribbon feature, right? This right here is not really adding a lot of mechanical weight, except in like, Descent to Avernus or whatever. I love this as a ribbon text, and I think that this, like more subclasses should kind of model this, right? I don't know that I've ever seen a subclass like feature within the base class that gives you a ribbon feature. And I love that. I really do. It's an experimental design choice that I can really appreciate. And I swear this isn't doing because I'm trying to blow smoke up Matt Colville's ass or anything. I actually really do appreciate this. And it's just interesting what little that does, but how much it says about the subclass itself. It's interesting. It's like you've ranked up as an Illrigger. But Invoke Authority, you invoke the authority granted to you by your Archdevil, channeling baleful energy to fuel magical effects. This is Channel Divinity. Each Invoke Authority option provided by your Archdevil explains how to use it. When you use your Invoke Authority, you choose which option to use. Once you use this feature, you must finish a long rest to use it again. Okay, so it's Channel Divinity, but it's subclass specific. Yeah. Ability score improvement, you get the standard ability score improvements. Extra attack, beginning at 5th level, you can attack twice. We all know how extra attack works. So, of course, that one's purple. You're going to be attacking. You get to do it twice. Cool. Aura of Despair. Beginning at 14th level, you radiate a magical aura of evil. Whenever a hostile creature within 15 feet of you makes an attack roll or saving throw, it must roll a d4 and subtract the number rolled from the result. Whoa. This is so good. Tiny die, right? 2.5. Think about this like this, right? This effectively means that your armor class has improved by 2.5, an average of 2.5, right? Anywhere from 1 to 4. That's so sick. Think about that. I could rephrase that, right? It's like against attack rolls, you effectively have, what is that? Like an extra 5 to your dexterity score, whatever. This is, that's already really, really great for you personally, right? Your allies in this area also benefit from that. Well, if it's attacking an ally, whatever. You roll up into the back ranks where they've got all their archers and you've got this aura of despair on. They're not hitting your buddies. They're going to have to get real, real lucky with their shots to pull that off. This also subtracting from saving throws is pretty big. Now, 2.5, like, geez, man, you are such a good frontliner with this. Like, this just being blanket applied to every Illrigger is so sick nasty. It could have just been whenever a creature within 15 feet of you makes an attack roll, and I would have felt like, that's already real, real good. This also applying to saving throws. Wow. That is a way strong effect. And one that is absolutely always going to come into play with every combat encounter after you get this. You are a sick, nasty frontliner as an Illrigger. Summon Hell. I gave this one a purple. I think that there was a small missed opportunity with this one. But beginning at 15th level as an action, you can summon a Bone Devil to serve you for 1 minute. The devil appears in an unoccupied space within 30 feet. It is bound to you and must obey your commands to the best of its ability. It acts on the same initiative that you act on and may both act and move on the same turn that you summon it. If you die or fall unconscious, the devil returns to Hell. Once you use this feature, you must wait 1 week before you can use it again. I think that this being restricted to the Bone Devil, I would have liked for this to have been, this is a CR9 creature, maybe a limit to where it was like either half your Illrigger levels or maybe CR9 or lower, just give it that flat arbitration to where they could assign a different fiend from maybe their particular, Archdevil. They wanted to get a little bit more flavorful. Like, I don't think, as long as it's, CR9 or lower, this is going to cause a lot of issues, right? The Bone Devil is kind of a bland... let me pull that one up. Yeah, like going over here into D&D Beyond. The Bone Devil is a little bit bland, right? Its actions, what can it really do with its turn? The devil makes 3 attacks, 2 with its claws and 1 with its sting. It's coming out dealing 4d8 plus 16 slashing damage on average, with a plus 8 to hit with each of those and a reach of 10 feet. It can also deal this poison damage if those do hit. And this is a really strong stat block, but it's just kind of a big brute blank kind of a thing, right? It could have been cool to explore this space a little bit more, open up the CR to other creatures, and yeah, that's the one missed opportunity on this, I feel like. The last part of this, you must wait a week before you can use it again. Like I said, this is a harsh cooldown, but this is very reasonable for this kind of an effect. Bone Devil being a CR9 creature, ooh, man, that is very, very good. Most of the summon spells that you're going to get out of Tasha's, I think, are making like maybe CR5 to CR maybe 8 creatures. Just getting that Bone Devil is sick nasty. Again, my only missed opportunity I feel like here is a lack of like character expression that you could have gotten out of a devil of a CR 9 or lower. The last little critiques I'm going to have, at least for the base class, and like I said, I'll talk about the subclasses in another video, is just the table itself. This is just a layout thing for me. I would have rather seen like the Baleful Interdict improvement or Diabolic Contract improvement, these kinds of things, broken up into, you know, like with Baleful Interdict, when you reach 10th level, this could have been like another feature, and then, you know, throw that in here instead of another improvement. Because like half of this table is just improvement, yeah. The Infernal Conduit dice, again, I think like if this were 1d10, 1d10, 2d10, 2d10, 3d10, this might have saved them a little bit of space, and this still could have been like a 1-column table right here. But overall, I do actually really like this Illrigger. There's some minor changes that I personally think I would make for my table, because I don't think Forked Tongue is going to be really healthy for social interaction at my table. And I just don't think that this is written in the manner in which they want it to. This should not be able to apply to Eldritch Blast or Flurry of Blows, in my opinion. And multiclassing is a thing. It's 5e. I know we say it's a variant rule, but like, I mean, you gotta consider that whenever you're designing things like this. And even not, if you want to consider feats to be a thing, it's possible to go snag Eldritch Blast. And yeah, so there are ways that Treachery can be real scary. That's going to be it on the Illrigger for this one. Just the base class here. I will be getting into the subclasses today and later on this week, so subscribe to my channel if you want to hear more of my breakdowns of this really cool, just metal as fuck subclass, or class here. So, I want to give a shout out to my Patreon sponsors. Thank you all so much for helping me keep the lights on around here and coffee in my blood. You all are absolute heroes. If you want to get some of my content, I try to release some exclusive stuff over on Patreon whenever I can get to it between all my other projects. Go check out some of my products over on the Dungeon Masters Guild. Just released the Dancer last month and the Merchant last year, so links to all that stuff will be down in the description below. Just another thank you here at the end to James Intercasto and MCDM for getting me this review copy of the Illrigger a little bit ahead of time so I can get this video out to you all. You all are incredibly kind, and thank you for being so supportive of just the general TTRPG scene, and supportive of little guys like myself that just really hoping to get up to those Matt Colville subscriber numbers. So yeah, thank you all so much. So yeah, I hope you all are staying safe, staying healthy, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.